Welcome, friends. Tonight, we slip into sandals and step back through the veil of time to a place of warmth, color, and the quiet pulse of everyday life. Imagine waking in a Roman city where the sun rises over tiled roofs, where olives are pressed in courtyards, and shopkeepers sweep stone thresholds just as they've done for years. Pompeii was a place of rhythm, of bread baked each morning, of lovers strolling beneath painted walls, of laughter spilling from taverns, and the splash of water in public fountains. It was a city alive with sound and scent, ritual and routine. And yet, beneath it all, there slept a mountain. They did not fear Vesuvius. Why would they? It had been silent for generations, a part of the landscape, not a threat. Life continued, as it always had, blind to what was stirring below. Tonight, we walk beside the people of Pompeii in the final days before the sky turned black. We linger in their homes, their baths, their marketplaces. We listen to their arguments and celebrations, their gossip and prayers. These were not statues frozen in ash. They were real, breathing lives, caught in a moment no one saw coming. This is not just a story of destruction. It's a story of life before the end, of how ordinary moments become precious when viewed through the lens of time and ash. So lie back, breathe deep, let the dust settle, and the past rise around you like mist. This is the entire story of Pompeii, the city frozen in ash that time forgot. Welcome to the journey. Rooms preserved in panic. Let us now leap forward in time. 17 centuries have passed. The memory of Pompeii has faded into a vague and distant legend. And now, the excavators have arrived. They have dug down through the layers of hardened ash and pumice, and they are stepping, for the first time, into a world that has been sealed away since the year 79 AD. They are not just digging up a ruin, they are opening a time capsule. They are entering rooms that have been preserved in the very last moments of their life. Let us join them as silent, ghostly observers as they clear the volcanic debris from the doorway of a house. They step inside. The air is still, musty, and holds the faint, ancient smell of the ash. The light from their lanterns falls upon a scene of ordinary life, interrupted with a shocking and tragic suddenness. In the kitchen, a scene of domesticity is frozen in time. On the raised brick hearth, a bronze cooking pot still sits on its iron tripod. Inside, the archaeologists will find the carbonized remains of the last meal that was being prepared, a simple stew of beans and vegetables. And in the great beehive-shaped oven, they find perhaps the most iconic and poignant of all Pompeian artifacts. They find a loaf of bread. It is round, it is flat, and it is scored into 8 sections. It is completely carbonized, turned to black, hard carbon by the intense heat of the eruption, but its shape is perfectly preserved. It is a loaf of bread that was put in the oven to bake and was never taken out. It is a humble, everyday object that speaks with a silent and overwhelming eloquence of a life that was cut short in the middle of a simple, routine task. They move into another room, perhaps a dining room. The furniture is gone, the wood having either burned or rotten away, but its ghostly impression is sometimes left in the hardened ash. They find the bronze hinges and locks from a wooden chest. They find a beautiful, delicate glass bottle that has somehow, miraculously, survived the cataclysm intact. In a bedchamber, they find the small, personal items of a life. A bronze mirror, its polished surface now dull and green with age. A small carved ivory comb lying on the floor beside the impression of a wooden bed. A pair of leather sandals, their shape perfectly preserved, though the leather itself is brittle and fragile. These are the objects that make the past feel shockingly present. These are not the grand monuments of the Forum. These are the intimate, everyday things that were touched and used and loved. Sometimes the rooms tell a story of a desperate, failed attempt to escape. Near a doorway, they find a scattered pile of coins dropped from a bag in a moment of panic. They find a bronze lamp lying on its side, its fuel spilled, its owner having abandoned it as they fled into the darkness. In one house, they find a dog, its skeleton still chained to a post in the courtyard. The poor animal was left behind in the chaos, and it died, stretching at the end of its chain, its mouth open in a silent, final bark. To walk through these excavated rooms is a deeply haunting experience. It is to be a voyeur looking into the most private and final moments of people's lives. The city is not a collection of artifacts in a museum. It is a place. A place where meals were cooked, where people slept, where small, everyday dramas unfolded. The rooms, preserved in panic, are a powerful and humbling testament to the fragility of our own ordinary lives. They are a reminder that the solid, predictable world we inhabit, with its daily routines and its familiar objects, can, in a single, terrible moment, be transformed into a museum of ghosts.
Morning in a Roman home. The sun has not yet cleared the peak of the great mountain that stands watch over the Bay of Naples. But its light, soft and golden, is already filling the sky, spilling into the quiet, sleeping city of Pompeii. The air is warm, carrying the scent of the sea, of ripe figs, and of the volcanic soil that makes this land so fertile. Inside the walls of a Roman domus, a wealthy family's home, the day begins with a gentle stirring. Light streams into the central courtyard, the atrium, its open roof a perfect square of the morning sky. It falls upon the shallow pool in the center of the floor, the impluvium, where rainwater is collected, its surface now still and reflective as glass. In a small, windowless sleeping chamber, a cubiculum, a man named Lucius Caecilius Ucundus, a banker, awakens. He lies on a simple wooden bed, its mattress stuffed with wool. The walls of his room are not bare, but are covered in a rich, deep red plaster, a color now known as Pompeian red. The air is cool and still. He rises, and his bare feet meet the cool, intricate patterns of the mosaic floor. He pulls on a simple linen tunic. The house around him is beginning to stir with a quiet, practiced efficiency. From the back of the house, from the slave quarters, come the first muted sounds of the day's work. The grinding of a stone hand mill for the morning's bread, the soft sweeping of a broom on the stone floors. Lucius walks from his chamber into the atrium, the heart of his home. Here, in a small, decorated niche in the wall, is the lararium, the household shrine. He pauses for a moment. This is the first and most important ritual of the day. He offers a small pinch of salted flour and a silent prayer to the lares, the guardian spirits of his family, and to the genius, the personal spirit of the head of the household. He is asking for their continued protection, for a day of good business, of health, of prosperity. He does this every morning. It is a ritual as natural and as necessary as breathing. His wife, Metella, is already awake, overseeing the morning's preparations. The children will soon be stirring. The house is a small, self-contained world, a fortress of family and of order. The sounds are familiar, comforting. The splash of water as a slave washes his hands in a bronze basin. The soft clatter of pottery from the kitchen. In the kitchen, the fire in the raised brick hearth is already lit. A slave girl is kneading dough for the day's bread. The smell of yeast and warm flour begins to fill the air. The breakfast, the ientaculum, will be simple. A piece of this fresh bread, perhaps dipped in wine or olive oil, a wedge of sheep's milk cheese, a few figs. This is a life of order, of predictability, of a deep and comfortable familiarity. The sun will rise, the bread will be baked, the business of the day will be conducted. Lucius stands in his atrium, the heart of his small kingdom, and the world feels solid, permanent, and good. The great mountain, Vesuvius, looms in the distance, a silent, green, and beautiful feature of the landscape. It has always been there. It is a source of the rich soil, a provider of the good wine. It is a friend. He does not know, he cannot know, that the rituals of this morning are the last of their kind. He does not know that the solid mosaic floor beneath his feet rests on a thin crust of earth, and that deep below, an immense and ancient power is beginning to stir. For now, there is only the light, the warm air, and the simple, beautiful, and ordinary business of a Roman morning. The gentle sounds of the house continue for a moment, then fade. Bathhouse rituals and gossip. As the morning progresses and the sun climbs higher, the men of Pompeii, their first business of the day concluded, begin to make their way to one of the city's most important and beloved institutions. They are going to the baths, the Thermae. The baths are not merely a place to get clean. They are the social heart of the city, a place of leisure, of business, of politics, and of the constant flowing river of gossip. Let us follow a citizen, perhaps a local magistrate named Marcus Holconius Rufus, as he enters the Stabian Baths, the oldest and largest in the city. He passes from the bright, noisy street into a different world, a world of steam, of echoing sound, and of a warm, humid air that smells of scented oil and damp stone. He first enters the apoditarium, the changing room. It is a grand vaulted hall, its walls decorated with frescoes, its ceiling with intricate plaster reliefs. Along the walls are a series of small niches or cubbies where he can store his clothes. He hands his fine woolen toga to a slave attendant and strips down to a simple linen cloth. Here, in the shared nakedness of the baths, the strict hierarchies of the Roman world are, for a time, softened. The first stop is the palestra, an open-air courtyard for exercise. The sun is bright here. Men are engaged in various forms of light activity. Some are wrestling on the sand-covered floor. Others are lifting stone weights. A group is playing a fast-paced ball game, their shouts echoing off the surrounding colonnades. Marcus does not participate. He is here to talk, to listen. He strolls along the portico greeting other members of the city's elite. He speaks with a merchant about a new shipment of wine from Spain. He listens to a rumor about a decision from the governor in Naples. The palestra is an outdoor office, a place where the real business of the city is conducted. Having worked up a light sweat, he moves into the bath block itself. He enters the tepidarium, the warm room. The air here is pleasantly, luxuriously warm, heated by the ingenious Roman system of underfloor heating, the hypocaust. He sits on a warm marble bench. The heat is gentle, relaxing. This is a room for acclimatization and for more conversation. The murmur of voices is low and constant. Next, he moves to the caldarium, the hot room. The heat here is intense, the air thick with steam. A great heated pool of water dominates the room. He sinks into the hot water, the heat a deep, penetrating comfort to his muscles. This is the room for sweating, for opening the pores, for the main business of cleansing. But he does not use soap. He covers his skin with a fine, scented olive oil. Then, a slave, using a curved metal scraper called a strigil, scrapes the mixture of oil, sweat, and dirt from his skin. This is the Roman way of washing. It is an exfoliating and deeply cleansing process. Finally, he makes his way to the frigidarium, the cold room. It contains a large circular pool of unheated, bracingly cold water. He plunges in. The shock of the cold water is a jolt to the system, closing the pores, awakening the senses. He emerges feeling refreshed, renewed, and completely, thoroughly clean. His bathing ritual is complete, but his time at the thermae is not over. He might visit the barber for a shave. He might receive a massage. He might simply sit in the gardens enjoying the sun. The baths are a microcosm of the city. They are a place of health, of business, of social connection. They are a daily testament to the genius of Roman engineering, which has brought clean, abundant water to the city through the aqueducts. They are a symbol of a civilized, ordered, and deeply pleasurable way of life. As Marcus leaves the baths, his body clean, his mind full of the day's news and gossip, he feels a deep sense of contentment. His world is a good one, a world of steam, of marble, and of a quiet, predictable order.
Street sellers and stolen olives. Let us leave the quiet, ordered luxury of the baths and step out into the vibrant, chaotic, and noisy world of a Pompeian street. This is the true lifeblood of the city, a place of commerce, of movement, of 1,000 small human interactions that, woven together, create the fabric of daily life. The street itself is a work of art and of practical engineering. It is paved with large, irregular flagstones of dark volcanic rock, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps and the iron-rimmed wheels of carts. Raised stepping stones are placed at intervals across the street, allowing a pedestrian to cross from one side to the other without stepping into the muck and the rainwater that flows down the central gutter. The street is narrow, and it is crowded. People from all walks of life press and jostle together. A wealthy matron, carried in a curtained litter by 4 slaves, makes her slow, stately way through the crowd. A group of off-duty soldiers, their armor clanking, swagger down the street, laughing loudly. A farmer from the countryside leads a donkey, its panniers laden with fresh vegetables for the market. And everywhere there are children, running barefoot over the warm stones, their shouts and laughter a constant, high-pitched music. The sides of the street are lined with open-fronted shops, the tabernae. These are small, one-room spaces, their wide wooden shutters taken down for the day, their wares spilling out onto the pavement. The air is thick with the sounds and smells of commerce. From a bakery, a pistrinum, comes the warm, life-affirming smell of baking bread. We can see the great beehive-shaped ovens and the bakers, their bodies white with flour, pulling out the round, flat loaves, which are already scored into 8 sections for easy tearing. Next door is a thermopolium, the Roman equivalent of a fast food counter. A large L-shaped masonry counter faces the street. Set into it are large earthenware jars, the dolia, containing hot stews of lentils and beans, and mulled wine, spiced and warm. A worker, his morning's labor done, stands at the counter eating a quick, cheap lunch. A street vendor, a piece of cloth spread on the ground, calls out his wares. He has a basket of ripe, purple figs, their sweet, sticky scent perfuming the air. Another sells olives from a large clay jar.
A small child, quick as a flash, darts in. His hand snatches a handful of olives, and he disappears into the crowd before the vendor can even shout. It is a small, everyday act of theft, a minor drama in the great play of the street. The walls of the buildings are a public canvas. They are covered in graffiti. There are advertisements for gladiatorial games to be held in the city's amphitheater. There are political slogans supporting one candidate or another for a local office. And there are more personal messages, a declaration of love, a crude insult, a line of poetry. The city is writing its own ephemeral history on its walls. The sounds are a symphony of life. The rhythmic bang of a blacksmith's hammer from a workshop down a side alley. The bleating of a goat being led to the market. The constant multilingual chatter of the crowd, Latin, Greek, Oscan, the ancient language of this region. This is a city that lives its life in public. The boundaries between the home and the street are fluid. A weaver works at her loom in the open doorway of her shop. A family eats their lunch on the stone bench outside their home. Life is a shared, communal, and often noisy experience. To walk down this street is to be immersed in the full, rich, and messy reality of Roman urban life. It is a world of vibrant color, of powerful smells, and of a deep, relentless, and beautiful human energy.
Paint, plaster, and private pleasures. We have seen the public face of Pompeii in its bustling streets and its grand communal baths. But to truly understand this city, we must step back through the doorways, away from the noise of the street, and into the private, hidden world of the Roman home. For it is here, on the walls of their houses, that the people of Pompeii revealed their dreams, their tastes, and their most intimate pleasures. Let us re-enter the domus of a wealthy citizen. We move past the public space of the atrium and into the more private, secluded heart of the home, the peristylum. This is a colonnaded garden, an open-air room that is a small, perfect, and tamed piece of nature. In the center, a small fountain might splash into a marble basin, its sound a cool and constant music. The garden is planted with fragrant herbs, with myrtle, with roses. The air here is still and sweet. This is a place of leisure, of quiet contemplation. The rooms that open onto this garden, the dining room, the library, the private studies, are the most luxurious in the house, and it is here that we are surrounded by the most spectacular feature of a Pompeian home, the frescoes. The walls are not painted a single flat color. They are a canvas for a vibrant and complex art form. The plaster is smooth and polished, and the colors are astonishingly rich and deep. The famous Pompeian red, the bright sunny yellow, the cool, serene blue. These colors create an atmosphere of warmth, of wealth, and of a deep and deeply human aesthetic pleasure. The paintings themselves are a window into the Roman imagination. The artists are masters of illusion. They paint architectural fantasies, impossible colonnades that seem to recede into the distance, windows that open onto imaginary landscapes of tranquil seas and sacred groves. The solid wall seems to dissolve, the small room made to feel vast and open. And then there are the myths. The walls are a storybook of the gods and heroes of Greece and Rome. Here is a scene of Bacchus, the god of wine, his face flushed, surrounded by his dancing followers. There is Venus, the goddess of love, reclining on a shell, a vision of divine beauty. Here, the hero Achilles is discovered among the daughters of a king. These are not just decorations, they are a sign of the homeowner's culture, of his education. They are a way of living inside the great epic stories of their civilization. But not all the art is so grand. In a small private chamber, the paintings might be more intimate. A delicate painting of a bird pecking at a piece of fruit. a still life of a glass bowl, so realistically rendered that you can almost see the light shining through it. And in some rooms, hidden from the view of casual guests, are the paintings that speak of the city's more private pleasures, explicit, erotic scenes, a celebration of the sensual life that was a natural and unapologetic part of their world. This love of beauty and of pleasure is not confined to the great houses. Even in a simple tavern, the walls might be painted with scenes of drinkers and gamblers. And as we've seen, the walls of the city itself are covered in the rough, immediate art of the people, the graffiti. The Pompeian lives in a world of images, of color, of stories painted on plaster. Their homes are not just shelters, they are galleries, they are theaters. They are an expression of a deep and deeply human desire to surround oneself with beauty, with pleasure, and with the timeless, magical world of myth.
The temple shadows and sacred offerings. In the bright sunlit world of Pompeii, religion is a constant and visible presence. The great temples stand as monuments of civic pride in the Forum, their marble columns and grand staircases a testament to the city's piety and its pact with the gods. But the religious life of a Pompeian is not confined to these great state ceremonies. It is a rich and complex tapestry, woven from public duty, from personal devotion, and from a deep and abiding connection to a host of gods, both local and foreign. Let us first visit the great Temple of Jupiter, which dominates the northern end of the Forum. It is the spiritual heart of the city, the home of the Capitoline Triad, Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the great protector gods of Rome. A citizen might come here to make a formal vow, to offer a prayer for the safety of the emperor, or to participate in a great public sacrifice. The atmosphere is one of stately, formal, and political religion. But now let us walk to a different part of the city, to a quieter, more intimate temple. This is the Temple of Isis, a goddess from far-off Egypt, whose mystery cult has become incredibly popular in Pompeii. The temple is a small, jewel-like complex. The architecture is a mixture of Roman and Egyptian styles. The walls are covered in vibrant frescoes depicting the myths of the goddess, her search for her dead husband Osiris, the magical birth of their son Horus. The air here smells of exotic incense. The sound is of the gentle shaking of the sistrum, the sacred rattle used by the priests. The worship here is different. It is more personal, more emotional. The followers of Isis are not just performing a civic duty, they are seeking a personal relationship with their goddess. They believe she can offer them protection in this life and a blessed immortality in the next. The cult offers a spiritual solace and a promise of salvation that the more formal state religion does not. And then there is the most personal religion of all, the religion of the home. As we have seen, every domus has its lorarium, its household shrine. Here the family worships its own private gods, the Lares, the spirits of their ancestors who protect the family, and the Penates, who guard the household's pantry. This is a religion of blood, of lineage, of the sacredness of the family itself. And woven into all of this is a world of daily casual piety. A fountain in the street might have a small shrine to a water nymph. A baker might have a small terracotta image of Vesta, the goddess of the hearth, near his oven. A traveler, before setting out on a journey, will leave a small offering to a shrine to Mercury, the god of travelers and commerce. The gods are not distant. They are neighbors. They are a part of the daily life of the city. Their presence is a comfort, but also a source of anxiety. The world is a place of signs and omens, a flock of birds flying in an unusual pattern, a sudden clap of thunder from a clear sky. These are messages that must be interpreted. Before any important undertaking, a Pompeian might consult a priest or an augur to ensure that the gods are favorable. And so the Pompeian walks through their city, through a landscape that is saturated with the divine, From the great, formal temple of the state, to the secretive, emotional cult of the East, to the small, intimate shrine in their own home, their lives are a constant conversation with the unseen world. It is a conversation of incense, of sacrifice, of small, hopeful offerings, a way of navigating the great and often frightening mysteries of life and of death. A gentle tremble in the floor. The day in Pompeii unfolds with its usual, predictable rhythm. In the forum, business is conducted. In the baths, gossip is exchanged. In the homes, the evening meal is being prepared. It is a day like any other day in a city that has known 1,000 years of such days. But then, something happens. It is a small thing, a brief and easily dismissed interruption in the familiar music of the city. Let us imagine we are in the triclinium, the dining room of a wealthy house. The family is reclining on their couches, enjoying their evening meal, the cena. The air is warm, the slaves are moving quietly, the conversation is relaxed. And then the floor shudders. It is not a violent shaking. It is a deep, gentle, and momentary tremble, a low, resonant hum that seems to come from the very bones of the earth. The wine in a silver cup on the low table ripples, its surface disturbed by an unseen force. A heavy curtain sways slightly. A small piece of plaster dust falls from the painted ceiling. And then it is over. A moment of silence hangs in the room. The conversation stops. People look at each other, their eyes wide with a moment of shared, unspoken question. A dog, sleeping in the corner, lets out a low, nervous whine. But the moment passes. Someone makes a nervous joke. Someone else refills a wine cup. The conversation resumes, perhaps a little more subdued than before. The event is noted, and then it is dismissed. This is a land of earth tremors. The people of Campania live on a restless part of the earth. They are accustomed to these small shudders. 17 years before this day, in the year 62 AD, a great and terrible earthquake had devastated Pompeii and the surrounding towns. The memory of that day is still alive in the city. You can see the evidence of it everywhere, in the cracks in the walls of the old temples, in the new construction and the scaffolding that still surrounds some of the damaged buildings. So, this small tremble is not a complete surprise. It is a reminder of the power that sleeps beneath their feet. But it is a familiar power, a known quantity. They have rebuilt their city once. They can endure these small reminders of its fragility. In another part of the city, in a crowded tavern, the tremor is barely noticed amidst the noise and the laughter. A few dice are scattered on a table. A splash of wine is spilled. The gamblers curse their luck, and the game continues. In a baker's shop, the baker, checking his loaves in the great oven, feels the ground move. He pauses, places a hand on the warm brick of the oven to steady himself, and then goes back to his work. The bread must be baked. The city absorbs the shock, and life continues. The tremble is a brief, strange punctuation mark in an otherwise ordinary day. No one understands what it truly means. No one knows that it is not an aftershock of the old earthquake, but a prelude to something new. It is the sound of a lock turning deep within the earth. It is the first gentle murmur of the great mountain as it begins to stir from its long, long sleep. The sky turns strange. The next morning, The sun rises over Pompeii as it always does. The gentle tremor of the previous evening is a fading memory, a topic of brief conversation that is quickly replaced by the more pressing business of the day. The markets open, the craftsmen go to their workshops, the children run in the streets. And yet, for those who are attuned to the subtle language of the natural world, there are signs that something is not right. The birds are the first to know. The sky, which is usually full of the high, swooping flight of swifts and the cheerful chatter of sparrows, is strangely quiet. The birds are flying low, in nervous, agitated flocks. They do not settle on the rooftops as they usually do. They seem to be fleeing, moving away from the great green mountain to the north. The animals in the city are restless. A dog, which is normally placid, whines and paces in the courtyard, refusing to be comforted. A mule, tied to a post in the street, pulls at its rope, its eyes wide with a fear that has no visible source. The sheep in a nearby field are huddled together, not grazing, but standing still, their heads all turned in the same direction, towards Vesuvius. And the air itself feels different. It is heavy, humid, and strangely still. There is a faint, almost imperceptible haze on the horizon, a slight dimming of the brilliant companion light. The air carries a faint, strange smell, a sharp, sulphurous tang, like the smell of a struck match. It is a smell that is not entirely unfamiliar in this volcanic land, but today it seems stronger, more persistent. The wells and the fountains, the city's lifeblood, are also behaving strangely. The water level in some wells has dropped for no apparent reason. In others, the water has become cloudy and has a bitter, mineral taste. Small dead fish are found floating in the cisterns. These are the small, disconnected signs, the whispers of a world that is falling out of balance. For most of the city's inhabitants, busy with their daily lives, these things go unnoticed, or they are noted and then dismissed. The world is a place of small, everyday mysteries. The birds are strange today. The dog is nervous. The water tastes a little off. Life is full of such minor aberrations. A sailor in the harbor looks up at the great mountain. A thin, wispy cloud, not like a normal rain cloud, seems to be clinging to its peak. He has seen such clouds before. He is a man of the sea, a man who knows the sky. He feels a prickle of unease, but he has a cargo to unload. He turns back to his work. A farmer, working in his vineyard on the slopes of the mountain itself, feels the ground beneath his feet. It seems to be humming with a low, deep vibration, a feeling that is meant more in the bones than it is heard with the ears. He pauses, listens, and then continues pruning his vines. The grapes must be tended. The city continues to breathe its normal, busy, sunlit life. The bread is being baked, the gossip is being exchanged, the money is being counted. But all around them, the natural world is screaming a silent warning. The birds, the animals, the water, the air itself, they all know that a great and terrible pressure is building deep within the earth. The sky is turning strange, and the city, in its beautiful sun-drenched innocence, does not yet know that it is living under a death sentence. The first stones fall. It is around midday. The sun is high in the sky, or it should be. But a strange, dark cloud, shaped like a vast stone pine tree, has risen from the peak of Vesuvius. It is a sight of terrifying and beautiful awe. The people in the streets of Pompeii have stopped their work to gaze up at it, their faces a mixture of fear and wonder. They have never seen anything like it. And then, the day turns to night. The great cloud, pushed by a high-altitude wind, spreads out, covering the sky, blotting out the sun. A deep, unnatural twilight descends upon the city. A collective gasp of fear rises from the streets. And then it begins to rain. But it is not a rain of water. It is a rain of stone. At first, the stones are small, the size of peas. They're made of a light gray porous rock, a pumice stone. They fall with a soft, hissing sound, a sound like a great, dry whisper. They are not heavy enough to cause injury, but their effect is deeply, psychologically terrifying. The sky itself seems to be disintegrating, raining down upon them. People run for cover. They abandon their market stalls, their workshops. They rush into their homes, into the temples, into any building that has a roof. The streets, which were so full of life just moments before, are suddenly empty. Inside their homes, the people huddle together in the strange semi-darkness, listening to the sound of the strange, dry rain on their terracotta-tiled roofs. The sound is a constant, steady, and unnerving patter. It is the sound of the world being slowly buried. As the hours pass, the rain grows heavier. The pumice stones are now larger, the size of walnuts, of fists. They fall with a greater force, thudding onto the roofs with a sound like a series of heavy blows. A terracotta tile struck by a larger stone cracks and shatters. The weight of the accumulating pumice begins to become a serious danger. The fine, gray ash that is falling with the stones begins to pile up in the streets, in the courtyards, on the roofs. It is a strange, light, and deceptively heavy snow. A foot of ash accumulates, then 2 feet. The weight on the flat roofs of the atriums and the porticos becomes immense. The wooden beams, which have stood for centuries, begin to groan and creak under the strain. Then comes the first crash. A section of a roof, somewhere in the city, gives way under the colossal weight. The sound is a terrible, splintering roar, followed by a cloud of dust. It is followed by another and another. The city is beginning to break apart under the weight of the sky. For the people huddled inside, this is a new and terrible choice. Is it safer to stay inside, to risk being crushed by a collapsing roof? Or is it safer to go out into the open, to face the constant bombardment of the falling stones? Some make a run for it. They tie pillows to their heads for protection and make a desperate dash through the streets, which are now thick with a deep, soft, and treacherous layer of pumice and ash. Their feet sink into it, making every step a struggle. Others choose to stay, to wait, to pray. They believe that this is a temporary madness, a passing anger of the gods. They believe that if they can just wait it out, the world will return to normal. They do not know that this is only the beginning. The gentle rain of stone is a prelude. The mountain's true fury has not yet been unleashed.
Dust in the courtyard. As the long, dark afternoon wears on, the world of Pompeii has been reduced to a monochrome landscape of gray. A thick, suffocating blanket of ash and pumice covers everything, silencing all sound, burying all color. For the people who remain in the city, the struggle for survival has become a desperate close-quarters battle for the most basic element of all, breathable air. Let us return to the domus of a family who has chosen to shelter in place. They have retreated from the outer rooms, where the roofs are groaning under the weight of the pumice, into the strongest, most heavily built part of the house, perhaps a small vaulted kitchen or a back room with a solid timbered ceiling. The light is gone. The sky, which was a strange twilight, is now a profound and absolute blackness, a blackness deeper than any night. They have lit a few small oil lamps. their flames a tiny, brave flicker in the immense, oppressive dark. The air itself has become the enemy. The fine, gray, volcanic ash is everywhere. It is a dust so fine that it seeps through every crack, under every door, through the very fabric of the building. The air is thick with it. It is a dry, choking fog that smells of sulfur and of the deep, hot earth. With every breath, they inhale this gritty powder. It coats the inside of their mouths, their throats, their lungs. A dry, painful, and uncontrollable cough becomes a constant, racking torment. Their eyes sting and weep, their vision blurred by the abrasive dust. They try to protect themselves. They take pieces of their linen tunics, dip them in water or wine, and tie them over their mouths and noses, a primitive and largely ineffective gas mask. It offers a moment of relief, the feeling of breathing a slightly cleaner, damper air, but the fine dust always finds its way through. The sounds of the outside world have been transformed. The sharp thud of the falling pumice stones has been replaced by the soft, steady, and relentless whisper of the falling ash. And beneath this sound, there is a new and more terrifying one. A low, continuous, and deep-throated rumble from the direction of the mountain. It is a sound that is felt as much as it is heard, a vibration that travels through the ground, through the walls of the house, and into the very bones of the people huddled within. It is the sound of the world being torn apart. In this dark, suffocating, and terrifying new reality, the normal human reactions are fractured. There is no single unified response. Some are paralyzed by fear. They sit in a corner, their bodies rocking back and forth, their minds overwhelmed by the sheer, incomprehensible horror of what is happening. Some turn to their gods. A mother clutches a small household idol, her lips moving in a silent, desperate prayer to a deity who seems to have abandoned them. Some are driven by a fierce, practical instinct to survive. A father is checking the roof beams, listening for the telltale creak of imminent collapse. He is gathering what he can, a bag of coins, a piece of bread, a jug of water, in preparation for a mad dash into the darkness. And strangely, some still cling to the illusion of normalcy. The human mind, in the face of an unthinkable catastrophe, will often retreat into the familiar. In one house, archaeologists would later find a family gathered around a table, a meal half-eaten. They were waiting. They were hoping. They were refusing to believe that their world was truly ending. The dust continues to fall. It piles up in the courtyard. It drifts against the doors. It slowly, quietly, and inexorably buries the city and the last desperate hopes of the people trapped within it.
The sea disappears, the creak of wooden boats on a suddenly dry harbor floor. While the city of Pompeii is being buried under a rain of stone and ash, another strange and terrifying event is unfolding a few miles away, at the edge of the Great Blue Bay. For the people who live by the sea, for the fishermen, the sailors, and those who have fled the city to the relative safety of the shore, a new and deeply unnatural horror is about to be revealed. The sea is disappearing. Let us imagine we are standing on the shore, near the port of Pompeii. The air is thick with the gray falling ash. The sky is a dark, apocalyptic twilight. The roar of the mountain is a constant, terrifying presence. To the north, but now, all eyes are turned to the water. The sea, which should be lapping gently at the shoreline, is in a state of strange and violent agitation. The water is churning, its surface disturbed by a series of unusual, chaotic waves. And then, with a great sighing, sucking sound, the sea begins to retreat. It is not the normal, gentle ebb of the tide. It is a rapid and terrifying withdrawal. The water pulls back from the shore, exposing a vast, dark and glistening expanse of the seabed that has not seen the light of day for 1,000 years. The boats that were moored in the harbor, the fishing vessels and the small merchant ships are suddenly left high and dry. They tilt over onto their sides on the wet sand and mud, their masts askew like a collection of broken toys. The newly exposed seabed is a strange and alien landscape. It is littered with the debris of the harbor, lost anchors, broken pottery, the tangled nets of the fishermen, and it is teeming with a frantic, dying life. Fish of all sizes are left flapping and gasping in the shallow, muddy pools, their silver bodies a stark contrast to the dark mud. For the people on the shore, this is a sight of profound and terrifying confusion. It is a violation of the natural order of the world. The sea, which has always been a constant, predictable presence, has suddenly betrayed them. What is happening is a phenomenon we now understand as a tsunami drawdown. The immense explosive eruption of the volcano has caused a massive displacement of the Earth's crust beneath the bay. The sea is being pulled back, drawn into a great depression in preparation for its return as a massive, destructive wave. But the people on the shore have no such scientific understanding. They can only interpret this event through the lens of myth and of terror. Some believe it is a sign from Neptune, the god of the sea, that he has abandoned them, that he is angry. Others, in a strange and fatal moment of opportunism, see the exposed seabed as a gift. They run out onto the wet, muddy flats to gather the flapping fish, a moment of desperate, last-minute scavenging in the midst of the apocalypse. They are oblivious to the immense and terrible danger they are in. And for those who had fled to the shore, hoping to escape by boat, this is the final cruelest twist of fate. Their avenue of escape is gone. The boats, their only hope, are now useless, stranded in the mud, far from the water's edge. They are trapped between a mountain that is raining fire and a sea that has vanished. The retreat of the sea is a moment of profound, eerie silence. The familiar sound of the waves is gone. There is only the low rumble of the volcano and the strange, soft, gasping sound of a dying ocean. It is a quiet prelude to a new and even more terrible phase of the mountain's fury.
The pyroclastic surge begins. A hot, rushing wind. The long hours of falling ash and pumice have been a slow, grinding, and terrifying ordeal. But it has been a form of destruction that is, in its own way, predictable. It is a burial. But now, in the late hours of the night and the early hours of the next morning, the nature of the eruption changes. The mountain, which has been breathing out its poison, is about to unleash its fire. This is the beginning of the pyroclastic surge. A pyroclastic surge is a phenomenon of almost unimaginable horror. It is a superheated, fast-moving cloud of gas, ash, and pulverized rock. It is not something that falls from the sky. It is something that flows along the ground, a great, incandescent avalanche of death, moving at the speed of a hurricane with a temperature of hundreds of degrees. For the people still alive in Pompeii and the surrounding towns, its arrival is sudden and absolute. It begins with a change in the sound. The steady rumble of the eruption is suddenly punctuated by a series of colossal, deafening explosions from the crater of Vesuvius. The very column of ash and pumice that has been rising for miles into the sky collapses under its own weight. And then the surge begins. It is a great, dark, and glowing cloud that detaches from the base of the mountain and begins to sweep down its slopes. The first thing to arrive is the wind. Not a normal wind, but a hot, screaming blast of air pushed ahead of the main surge. It is a wind that can knock a person off their feet, that can tear the tiles from the roofs, that can snap trees like twigs. And then comes the heat. It is not the gentle heat of a fire. It is an instantaneous, searing, and all-consuming wave of thermal energy. It is a heat so intense that it can carbonize wood, melt metal, and vaporize soft tissue in a fraction of a second. For any living thing in its path, death is instantaneous. The lungs are seared, the body is flash-heated. There is no time for a cry, no time for a final thought. There is only a single, silent moment of annihilation. And then comes the cloud itself, a dense, roiling, and suffocating mass of hot ash and gas. It flows like a liquid, pouring over the landscape, filling every valley, every street, every room of every house. It carries with it larger rocks and debris, a churning, destructive tide that smashes down walls and topples columns. The first of these surges roars down the western slope of the mountain directly towards the seaside town of Herculaneum. It smashes into the town, instantly killing everyone who remains, and buries the city under a thick, dense layer of superheated material that will harden into a rock-like tuff. Several more surges follow, each one larger and more powerful than the last. They spread out from the mountain in all directions. One of these, one of the later and larger surges, sweeps down the southeastern slope, directly towards the already buried city of Pompeii. For the few who may have survived the falling pumice and the collapsing roofs, huddled in the strongest parts of their homes, this is the final, inescapable end. The hot toxic gas seeps through every crack, filling the small spaces where they have taken refuge. The heat is unbearable. And then the great crushing weight of the ash cloud itself arrives, sealing their tomb forever. The pyroclastic surge is the mountain's final, definitive statement. It is a force of nature so powerful, so absolute, that it is beyond all human comprehension. It is not a battle, it is an erasure. In a matter of minutes, a living, breathing landscape with its towns, its farms, its people, is transformed into a silent, gray, and utterly sterile desert of ash.
Trying to flee. Sound of panicked, muffled footsteps on soft ash, a horse neighing in terror, a distant, crashing sound. Narrator: not everyone in Pompeii chose to wait for the end. From the first moments that the stones began to fall, thousands of people made the desperate, instinctual decision to flee. Their flight was not an orderly evacuation. It was a chaotic, terrifying, and often futile scramble for survival, a desperate race against a collapsing world. Let us imagine a family, a father, a mother, and two small children, making the decision to leave their home. They have waited for hours, hoping the strange rain of stone would stop. But the roofs are beginning to groan, and the air is growing thick and hard to breathe. The father makes the choice. We must go. We must try to reach the sea or the road south, away from the mountain. Their preparations are hasty, panicked. They grab what they can, a small bag of coins, their life savings, a piece of bread, a skin of water. The mother takes a precious piece of jewelry, a memory of a happier time. The father takes a single, sharp knife for protection.
They tie pillows or pieces of thick cloth to their heads, a pathetic defense against the still-falling pumice stones. The father lifts the smaller child onto his shoulders. The mother takes the hand of the older one, and they step out of the relative safety of their home into a world of pure chaos. The street is unrecognizable. It is buried under several feet of a soft, gray, and treacherous carpet of pumice and ash. Every step is a struggle. The feet sink deep into the light, shifting material, as if trying to run on a steep sand dune. The darkness is absolute. The sun has been gone for hours. The only light is the terrifying, flickering, and almost constant lightning that flashes within the great ash cloud above, casting a brief, strobe-like and ghostly illumination on the scene. And there is the red, hellish glow from the peak of the mountain itself. They are not alone. The streets are full of other desperate, fleeing figures, dark shapes moving through the gloom. There is no sense of community now, only a shared, individual panic. People push, they shove, they fall. A cry of pain is lost in the constant, low rumble from the volcano. The air is a torment. The fine, choking ash is everywhere. They hold cloths to their mouths, but it is not enough. Their coughing is a constant, racking agony. They stumble over unseen obstacles buried in the ash, an overturned cart, a fallen column, the body of someone who has already been struck down by a larger falling rock, a pumice bomb. A horse, broken free from its stable, gallops past in a blind panic, its eyes wide with terror. A pack of dogs, their owners gone, roams the streets, their barks a sharp, lonely sound in the chaos. The family pushes on. Their destination, the city gates. But the city itself has become a trap. The narrow streets are canyons, channeling the falling debris. A roof collapses nearby with a great, splintering roar, sending a cloud of dust and ash into the already thick air. They are driven by a single primal instinct to get away from the mountain, to get to open country. But every step is a monumental effort. The children are crying, terrified and exhausted. The parents are nearing the end of their own strength, their lungs burning, their muscles screaming. Their flight is a small human story of desperation in the face of an overwhelming cosmic force. They are not heroes. They are just a family trying to stay together, trying to find a path through the end of their world. For some, this desperate flight will lead to safety. For many others, the city will not let them go. Their journey will end here, in the dark, ash-filled streets of their own home.
The Forum falls silent. Let us return for a final, ghostly visit to the heart of the city, the Forum. Just yesterday, this was the vibrant, sunlit center of Pompeian life, a place of law, of commerce, of religion, of a proud and confident civic order. Now, it is a scene of utter and profound desolation, a graveyard of a civilization. The world here is a monochrome desert of gray ash, lit by the terrifying electrical flashes from the sky. The familiar, magnificent buildings are transformed into half-buried, broken specters. The fine white marble of the temples and the basilicas is stained a dirty gray, their clean classical lines blurred and softened by the thick blanket of pumice. The great open space of the Forum floor is gone,
buried under many feet of volcanic debris. The honorary statues of the city's great men, which stood on their pedestals just a day before, are now pathetic, half-submerged figures. A bronze arm reaching up from the ash, the proud stone head of an emperor lying on its side, its eyes staring blankly into the dark, ash-filled sky. The buildings themselves are dying. The immense weight of the pumice on their roofs is a force that even Roman engineering cannot withstand. We hear a deep, groaning, splintering sound. A great wooden roof beam in the basilica, the law court, finally gives way. With a slow, majestic, and terrible crash, the entire roof collapses inward, sending a great plume of ash and dust into the air. The place where laws were debated and justice was dispensed is now a hollow, broken ruin. The temples, the homes of the gods, are no sanctuary. The front of the great temple of Jupiter, with its towering columns, is a scene of particular devastation. One of the great columns, its foundation weakened by the earth tremors, its structure battered by the falling stones, begins to lean. It holds for a moment, a last defiant stand against the chaos, and then, with a sound like a great, deep sigh of stone, it topples over, crashing onto the steps of the temple, breaking into several large, pathetic pieces. The home of the king of the gods is broken. There are bodies here. The people who were caught in the forum when the eruption began, who tried to take shelter in the deep porticos of the buildings, have been overcome. They lie in small, still heaps, their forms already softened and rounded by the constantly falling ash. They are becoming a part of the landscape of destruction. The silence in the forum is a new and terrible kind. It is not the quiet of the night or the respectful hush of a religious ceremony. It is the silence of the end. The orators are gone. The clink of the money changers' coins is gone. The chatter of the crowd is gone. All that is left is the soft, relentless whisper of the falling ash and the low, indifferent rumble of the mountain that is their executioner. The Forum of Pompeii, which was a symbol of the enduring power and order of the Roman world, has become a monument to its ultimate fragility. It is a powerful, silent, and terrible testament to the fact that even the greatest works of man, the proudest symbols of civilization, can be unmade and buried and silenced in a single terrible day.
Beneath roofs and rubble. As the city above is battered and buried, many of its inhabitants have sought refuge in what they believe to be the safest, most protected spaces in their world. They have fled not into the streets, but downwards, into the dark, enclosed, and subterranean parts of their homes. They are hiding in the wine cellars, under the heavy stone arches of a staircase, in the windowless back rooms of their houses, hoping to wait out the storm of stone and ash. Let us join one such group. A family and their slaves who have taken shelter in the cryptoporticus, the vaulted underground corridor of their large villa. The space is dark, the only light from a single sputtering oil lamp. The air is cool, and it feels, for a time, safe from the chaos outside. Above them, they can hear the constant heavy thud of the falling pumice stones on the floor of the courtyard. The sound is muffled, distant, but it is a constant reminder of the strange and terrible rain that is burying their world. They huddle together on the cold, damp floor. They are a small, terrified island of humanity. They do not speak much. There is nothing to say. They listen. They listen to the sounds of their world being destroyed. They hear the groaning of the house above them, the building straining under the unimaginable weight that is accumulating on its roof. They hear the sharp, splintering crack of a wooden beam as it gives way, and then the terrifying, deafening roar as a section of the house collapses, sending a great shudder through the ground beneath them. The dust and the ash begin to find their way into this subterranean refuge. It seeps through the cracks in the ceiling, through the ventilation shafts. The air becomes thick, and the familiar, painful, choking cough begins. And then the nature of the threat changes. The pyroclastic surge sweeps over the city. The people in the cellar do not see it. They feel it. They feel a sudden, intense wave of heat that seems to come through the very stone of the walls. They hear a great roaring, rushing sound from above. And then the air is gone. The superheated, toxic gas of the surge, denser than air, pours down into their shelter. It fills the space in a matter of seconds. For the people huddled there, the end is swift. It is not a burial, but a sudden thermal shock, a breath of air that is fire. In other parts of the city, in other shelters, the end comes more slowly. A group of people has hidden in a small, strong room at the back of a house. The roof above them holds. They survived the first pumice fall. They survived the first surges. But their refuge has become their tomb. The ash and pumice have now piled up so high that it has blocked the doorways. They are sealed in. The air in their small chamber is finite. They are left in the darkness to listen to their own, increasingly shallow breathing as the oxygen in their small, dark world is slowly, inexorably used up.
The ash closes in. The great, violent, and explosive phases of the eruption are over. The pyroclastic surges have done their work of instant annihilation. The city of Pompeii, or what is left of it, is now a silent, sterile, and superheated landscape. But the mountain has not yet finished its work. A new and final phase of the burial now begins. From the great dark cloud that still hangs over the entire region, a fine gray ash begins to fall. It is not the light, airy ash of a wood fire. It is a heavy, dense, and wet ash, like a fine volcanic cement. It falls not with a hiss, but with a soft, steady, and almost silent persistence. It is a gentle and a merciless snow. It falls on the broken roofs of the surviving buildings. It falls on the half-buried columns of the forum. It falls on the still, silent forms of those who died in the streets. This ash is a great preserver. It is a perfect casting material. It settles over the bodies of the dead, filling the space around their clothes, their hair, their final, contorted postures. It captures, with a terrible and perfect fidelity, the very last moment of their lives. Over time, as the soft tissues of the bodies decay, a hollow space will be left within the hardened ash, a perfect, three-dimensional negative of a human being. The ash closes in. It fills the streets, not with the light, airy drifts of the pumice, but with a dense, heavy layer that will, over time, compact and harden into a form of rock.
It pours in through the broken doorways and the collapsed roofs of the houses, filling the rooms from floor to ceiling, entombing everything within. It buries the frescoes on the walls, protecting their vibrant colors from the light and the air that would have made them fade. It buries the mosaics on the floors. It buries the carbonized remains of the wooden furniture, the bronze statues, the clay pots, the very loaf of bread left in the oven. It is a silent and a total burial. It smothers all sound, all light, all life. The silence that descends upon Pompeii now is a silence of a different order. It is the silence of a city that is not only just dead, but has been erased. It has vanished from the face of the earth, hidden beneath a new, gray and undulating landscape of ash. The world moves on. The survivors who manage to escape will tell their stories. The Roman state will make some half-hearted attempts to dig for treasure, but the task is too great. The city is too deeply buried. And so Pompeii is left to its long, silent sleep. The ash that was its executioner becomes its patient and unknowing guardian. For nearly 1,700 years, the city will lie undisturbed, its final, terrible day frozen in time, a perfect and perfectly silent secret, waiting deep beneath the new soil for a future it could never have imagined. The ash has closed in, and the long, quiet wait begins.
The Garden of the Fugitives. Of all the discoveries made at Pompeii, none is more arresting, more human, or more deeply disturbing than the plaster casts of the victims. These are not skeletons. They are not statues. They are something in between, the direct, three-dimensional impression of a human being in the very last second of their life, a fossil of their final agony. The technique for creating these casts was developed in the 1860s by the archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli. The excavators, as they dug through the hardened ash, would often find strange, hollow cavities. Fiorelli realized that these were the spaces left behind by the decomposed bodies of the victims. The fine, wet ash had packed around them, capturing their form, and then had hardened like cement. The soft tissues had then rotted away, leaving a perfect, hollow mold. Fiorelli's genius was to pour liquid plaster of Paris into these cavities before excavating them fully. He would pour it in through a small hole and let it fill the entire space. Once the plaster had set, the surrounding ash could be carefully chipped away, revealing the shape of the person who had died there, 17 centuries before. To look at these casts is to come face to face with the human reality of the eruption in a way that nothing else can. We are no longer looking at artifacts, we are looking at people. Let us visit one of the most famous and tragic of these sites, a place known as the Garden of the Fugitives. It is a large open vineyard not far from the city walls. Here, a group of 13 people were fleeing the city together when they were overcome by the pyroclastic surge. They died here, in the open, and their bodies were buried by the ash. The plaster casts made from their hollows reveal a story of a family's final, desperate moments. There are adults and children. One cast shows a man, perhaps a servant, who has fallen. He is pushing himself up with one arm, his other hand covering his mouth and nose, a futile attempt to filter the toxic, ashen air. Another shows a young child, lying on its back, its small limbs contorted. Near the child are the forms of its parents, their bodies huddled close together, as if in a final protective embrace. These are not posed artistic figures. They are raw, unedited moments of death. We can see the folds of their clothing, the straps of their sandals, the contorted muscles of their bodies as they struggled for a final breath. we can see the agony in their postures. They are a silent, terrible, and profoundly moving tableau of a family's end. These casts are found all over the city. A man, curled up in a fetal position under a staircase. A woman, her face buried in her arms as if she could not bear to see what was coming. A priest, found in the temple of Isis. A gladiator, still in his leg greaves, found in the gladiatorial barracks. Each cast is a story, a life, a final desperate moment, captured forever. They transform the abstract, historical event of the eruption into something deeply personal and immediate. They force us to move beyond the fascination with the ruins and the artifacts, and to confront the human cost of the tragedy. The garden is quiet now. The sun is warm. The new vines grow in the rich volcanic soil. But here, in the still white forms of the plaster fugitives, the final terrible moments of that day are always present. They are the permanent ghosts of Pompeii, their silent screams echoing across the centuries.
Villas frozen in color. While the plaster casts of the victims capture the human tragedy of Pompeii, it is the art on the walls of the villas that preserves the life, the spirit, and the beauty of the city. The eruption of Vesuvius, in its act of destruction, was also an act of miraculous preservation. The blanket of ash that buried the city also protected its frescoes from the light, the air, and the moisture that would have destroyed them over the centuries. To step into an excavated Pompeian villa is to step into a world of vibrant, breathtaking color. Let us visit one of the grandest and most mysterious of these homes, the Villa of the Mysteries, which stands just outside the city walls. We walk through its silent, empty rooms, and the walls around us are alive with stories. The colors are astonishing. The deep, rich, and lustrous red, a color so iconic that it has become synonymous with the city. The bright, sunny ochre yellow, the cool, serene sky blue, made from a precious imported pigment, the deep, verdant green of the painted foliage. These are not the faded, muted colors of a ruin. They are as bright and as vibrant as the day they were painted. The most famous room in the villa contains a magnificent, continuous frieze that wraps around all four walls. It depicts a strange and enigmatic series of scenes, a narrative that scholars believe represents the initiation of a young bride into the mystery cult of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. We see a procession of life-sized figures, their movements graceful and ritualistic. A young woman reads from a sacred scroll. A satyr plays the pipes. A winged figure wields a whip in a ritual flagellation. The figures are rendered with an incredible naturalism, their bodies solid and three-dimensional, their faces full of emotion. The scene is both beautiful and deeply unsettling, a glimpse into the secret spiritual life of the Roman elite. In other villas, the themes are different. We find the great myths of Greece and Rome painted with a vivid, dramatic flair. Theseus slaying the Minotaur in the labyrinth. Narcissus gazing at his own reflection in a pool of water, oblivious to the world around him. These are the stories that formed the cultural wallpaper of their lives, the grand narratives that they lived with every day. But there is also an art of quiet, everyday beauty. We find exquisite still life paintings, a glass bowl of fruit, so realistically rendered that you can see the light refracting through the glass, the soft, downy texture on the skin of a peach, a painting of a rabbit nibbling on a bunch of grapes. These are moments of quiet, domestic observation, a celebration of the simple, beautiful objects of their world. And there is the art of illusion.
The painters of Pompeii were masters of trompe-l'oeil. They painted architectural scenes that seemed to open the wall up into a fantasy world of elegant colonnades and sun-drenched gardens. They created a sense of space, of light, of a world that was larger and more beautiful than the room itself. To be surrounded by these frescoes is to be in the presence of the Pompeian spirit. It is a spirit that valued beauty, that loved stories, that celebrated the pleasures of the senses, and that sought to create a world of color, of light, and of illusion, to hold back the shadows. These walls are not silent. They are singing with the color of a life that was lived fully, right up until the very last moment.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt 1,000,000 other feet. The shops, the tabernae, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick beehive-shaped ovens are intact, and sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Dumvir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successus the weaver loves Iris the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great, silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment. And because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt 1,000,000 other feet. The shops, the tebrae, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick beehive-shaped ovens are intact, and sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless, circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Duluam there," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiator games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successus, the weaver, loves Iris, the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment. And because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt a million other feet. The shops, the tabernae, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick beehive-shaped ovens are intact. And sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Duumvir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal, human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched. Successus the weaver loves Iris, the slave girl, but she does not care for him. A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single, catastrophic moment. And because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died
as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt 1,000,000 other feet. The shops, the tabernae, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick beehive-shaped ovens are intact. And sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Duumvir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal, human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successes the weaver loves Iris the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on the wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great, silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment, and because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more. Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them, just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt 1,000,000 other feet. The shops, the tabernae, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick, beehive-shaped ovens are intact, and sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy, hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Duumvir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And then there are the personal, human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successus the weaver loves Iris the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment. And because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them, just as a Roman would have,
your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt a million other feet. The shops, the taberne, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick beehive-shaped ovens are intact, and sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Dumavir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal, human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successus the weaver loves Iris the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment, and because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.
Streets buried, yet intact. When we think of an ancient ruin, we often picture a few broken columns, the scattered foundations of a building, a ghost of a city. But Pompeii is different. It is not a ruin in the same way. The blanket of ash did not just destroy, it protected. It created a near-perfect mold of the city, preserving not just its buildings, but the very texture of its daily life. To walk the excavated streets of Pompeii is to walk through a city that has not so much died as it has been paused. Let us walk these silent streets. The paving stones of dark volcanic rock are still here, the same stones that were walked upon by the city's last inhabitants. We can see the deep ruts worn into them by the iron-rimmed wheels of 1,000 carts, a permanent record of the city's ancient traffic patterns. The raised stepping stones that allowed pedestrians to cross the street are still in place. You can step on them, just as a Roman would have, your foot fitting perfectly into the worn depression of a stone that has felt a million other feet. The shops, the taberne, are still here, their open fronts facing the street. We can see the masonry counters with the holes for the large clay jars, the dolia, that once held hot food or wine. We can almost hear the ghostly echo of the shopkeeper's call. The bakeries are still here. The great brick, beehive-shaped ovens are intact. And sitting beside them are the mills, the heavy, hourglass-shaped stones of volcanic rock that were used to grind the grain. They were turned by donkeys, and you can see the worn path where the animals trod their endless circular journey. And then there is the graffiti. The walls of Pompeii are a public diary, a chaotic and vibrant conversation that was frozen in mid-sentence. The paint has faded, but the words, scratched into the plaster with a sharp tool, are still there. There are the political slogans, painted in large red letters. "I ask you to elect Claudius Verus Duumvir," one reads, a ghost of an election campaign. There are the advertisements for the gladiatorial games, promising 30 pairs of gladiators and their substitutes, and an awning to protect from the sun. And there are the personal, human messages, the voices of the ordinary people. A lover has scratched, "Successus the weaver loves Iris the slave girl, but she does not care for him." A bored person has drawn a caricature of a local politician. A child has practiced their alphabet on a wall. These are the voices of the city, a chorus of desires, of insults, of jokes, and of simple human declarations of existence. They are a powerful and immediate connection to the people who lived and breathed in these streets. The city is a map of its own life. We can see the worn stone thresholds of the houses. We can see the public fountains where people gathered for water. We can stand in the great, silent space of the amphitheater and imagine the roar of the crowd. Pompeii did not have time to become a ruin, to be slowly dismantled for its stone, to be weathered away by the centuries. It was sealed in a single catastrophic moment. And because of this, it remains the most intact and the most hauntingly alive city of the ancient world. It is a place where the past is not a distant country, but is right here, just beneath the surface, waiting to be walked upon once more.